Hi out there! This is going to be another little bit of an in-depth video. Not too in-depth, I'm just talking about one thing in it. It's about sculpting medium. I still have some of this left over. It's the Super Sculpey that I used to make my customs before. Now this stuff is not bad by any stretch of the imagination. It's a good material. If it's a nice, cheap, easy to find alternative for making custom toys. It's easy to work with and pretty strong. I mean, it tends to not be too strong if you put it too close to a joint or moving part. But if you just want to use it to make new hair on the character's head or something, then it's fine. It can hold up under a lot of circumstances. I still have quite a few customs, like this Samus custom here. She's made with Super Sculpey. She's held up very well. But I got some new stuff, and there's been a couple people who've been asking how it works. That's this Avis epoxy sculpt. Now, as I said before, this is a two-part compound. You have the gray stuff and the white stuff. You separately, these are just sticky, blobby things. Mix them together, and they become a light gray, sticky, blobby thing. After 2 hours, it becomes a very hard, sticky, blobby thing. After well, it's no longer sticky or blobby after 2 hours because then it's hard. And after 24 hours, it's strong as stone. It's actually in many cases stronger than the material you use that the figure is made out of. Yes, for example, all the sculpting done on Link Sonic here is done with epoxy sculpt. I've actually dropped this thing on the floor like 3 times and he has never broken or cracked anywhere. So yeah, epoxy sculpt is good stuff. But it is more difficult to work with than Super Sculpey. For example, you have to make sure you mix the two quantities equally. If you have more of one part than the other, then it's not going to mix properly. The texture will be off. It might even be crumbly or never cure properly. Secondly, is while you're working with it, it is very soft. And so soft, in fact, that if you try to make something thin and standing, it actually might not support its weight and flop over. So that's another thing you have to worry about. And of course, it's sticky, meaning when you're working with it, it'll want to stick to your fingers. So when you pull your hands away, it'll come off what you were sculpting on. That is by far the most frustrating part. And one more thing, this stuff, it stains. This stuff stains. Super Sculpey didn't stain. This stuff does. Particularly the white stuff. The white stuff stains more than anything else. Yeah, and I'm not sure if it's entirely non-toxic. I mean, Super Sculpey, you could eat that stuff and it wouldn't do any harm to you, but I don't know about this stuff. So, small children might want to supervise them when they use this because I know when I've had to sometimes I had to lick my fingers to keep my hands from sticking to it, and that leaves a taste in my mouth for hours. Ugh. Yeah, this is not something you want to put in your mouth. Alright, and you can't just reach in with your fingers, dig out the stuff, and then reach into the other thing and dig out more stuff, because then you'd mix it in the vials, and then you get these little hard crumbs in there. No. I use a popsicle stick. This was never actually in a popsicle. You can buy them from craft stores. They're actually used for arts and crafts projects. So I use one end of the craft stick to dig into one, and the other end to dig into the other, ensuring that I never mix them. Until I want to mix them, that is. So, you just reach in there and pull out a good glob of the material. Now what I like to do is right after I get it out of the thing, I like to make it into a ball that helps me get an idea of how much of the material I actually have. And then I use the other end of the stick to reach into the other one and get out another glob. And I mold this into another ball. This way I'm also assured that they have the same density. You know, I'm squeezing the air out of it. And as you can see, this stuff is already starting to leave residue on my fingers. The white stuff leaves residue like no one's business. The white stuff is softer and stickier than the gray stuff. Like, this actually feels like wet modeling clay. This feels more like wax. And I got a little bit more white stuff than gray stuff, so I'm going to just take out a little bit of extra gray stuff. Just a little bit. To beef it up, make it the same size as the white blob. And this is what you should get. See? Equal quantities of the gray stuff and the white stuff. Now, I've never found a store that sells this stuff, but I had to buy it on eBay, and it costs roughly the same as the Super Sculpey, which is cool. The problem is, if you buy it from the actual website, the avastudio.com, which is the studio that makes it, they'll want to charge you like $10 to $15 for shipping, which is like doubling the price. So the eBay seller I found had it for the same price as the Ava Studio and with much more reasonable shipping. I think they only charged me like $2 for the shipping. Like, I don't know why Avis charges so much shipping. Also, this gray stuff really smells like Cheetos. I don't know what the hell they put in Cheetos or what they put in this stuff, but this smells like Cheetos. Okay, so next you're going to have to mix them. Now the instructions say that they need to be very thoroughly mixed, so I'm going to zoom the camera in so you can see my hands as I work. Alright, so stop focusing on my shirt, focus on the clay in my hands. There we go. So here we have, you're just going to mush them together. The easiest way to ensure complete mixing is to flatten them into a little pancake like this. Then you fold it in half, mush it again, fold it in half, and then you just keep doing the fold and mush. Mush, fold, mush, fold, mush, fold. And that should assure that your material is completely mixed. And you just keep on doing this. Pinch and roll, and you keep on doing it until you stop seeing lines in it. It shouldn't look marbled anymore. It should look one uniform color. And it'll come off as an off-white, a very, very light gray. Now this is where things get kind of sticky. Because, like I said, this has the consistency of freshly chewed bubble gum. It's rather soft, it's pretty sticky, it's nowhere near focused. Why isn't it focusing? There we go. It's very soft, it's kind of sticky, it's nowhere near, you only have about 2 hours to work with it before it hardens and becomes useless. So even then, you probably want to give it about 10 minutes or so to settle just a bit so that it's a little bit stiffer and more on the level of clay. Because look at this. Yeah, this it's not sticky enough to support its weight in my hand, but it's sticking to me pretty good, see? Yeah. That stickiness is going to last, like... And yes, it's going to leave residue on your fingers. You might want to work with latex gloves, very thin form-fitting latex gloves, if you don't want to have to keep washing your hands afterwards. But that is basically how you mix the epoxy sculpt. Let's zoom back out so you can see my face. And I've pretty much taught you all there is to it. That is how you mix epoxy sculpt, and once you get it to this point, you just mold it into whatever you want, like clay. Just remember that you have about 2 hours to work on it before it becomes too stiff to be molded anymore, and then you have another day to wait before it's completely hard. I have been told that there are some ways to accelerate the hardening. Like if you left it next to a 100-watt bulb, the heat from that bulb will accelerate its hardening time to only a couple of hours rather than a whole day. Of course, a 100-watt bulb is surprisingly hot. If you put it onto a plastic action figure, then your bulb might actually warp or even melt the plastic that the action figure is made out of. And absolutely do not try to accelerate the curing process any more than that. I mean, it's a chemical process. It's like cement setting. If you try to accelerate it too much, you're going to affect the its qualities. It's going to become more brittle and fragile. It's not going to be. I mean, the whole reason you go through all this effort, like having to spend more, having to go through that mixing crap, having to deal with this sticky bubblegum texture, the whole reason you go through that is because the end result is super strong, stronger than the action figure's native material. But that would all be for naught if you went and did something goofy like trying to speed up the hardening process only to end up with something that's going to become brittle and flaky. Get it? I've also read, I haven't used it myself, but it actually does say somewhere on here that there's a special solvent which dissolves this stuff, and they even recommend like using it on a brush to wipe your surface to get rid of fingerprints that you might leave behind. That's pretty nifty. You know, if you notice the thing you create has fingerprints on it, then you can get the solvent and paint it on. Not enough to dissolve your whole work, but just enough to soften the surface and get rid of your fingerprints. And aside from that, that's all there is to Super Sculpey. That's all there is to Apoxie Sculpt. It's not that different from Super Sculpey. Yeah, it's just another material that you're sculpting out of. So yeah, quick summation. Make sure that you don't mix the two components in their jars. Make sure that when you do mix the components, they're in equal quantities. And make sure that you don't mix too much, because if you have any left over when you're done, it's going to harden on you and you won't be able to use it anymore. Alright, this is the Toy Customizer, Wakeangek2K1. And I hope that you've learned something today.